start. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, Mandy.
Great. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last edition for the year of Applied HE's Fireside Chats. My name is Mandy Mock, and I'm the founder and CEO of Applied HE, a new Singapore-based but globally oriented higher education evaluation and branding agency. The topic of this evening's discussion is, I'm sure, the top agenda for every key decision maker of a university in pursuit of the best models for international student recruitment. We're very grateful to our partner, Education Insight, and our sponsors, the City University of Hong Kong and Universitas of Indonesia, for their support in making this webinar a reality. Leading this evening's discussion is a good friend, Dr. Janet Iliva, who is also the founder and director of Education Insight. She is joined by an exceptionally strong panel of speakers from the US, Australia. I heard he just went to the UK now. Then we have one from the UK and Malaysia, whom she will introduce to you shortly. Janet, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandy. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all who is joining us today. I'm Janet Ilieva from Education Insight, an international education research consultancy based in Bristol in the UK. And I'm absolutely delighted to join today's fireside chat and our distinguished panel. Our topic focuses on the university's pursuit of the world's best students. How do they do it? Following 2 very disrupted years, universities are resuming their international student recruitment activities. But what have we learned from the 2 years of grappling with the pandemic? And are there any innovations or new models of recruitment? Join our distinguished panel and me to discuss these issues. I'm delighted to join today Dr. Rajika Bandari, Principal of Rajika Bandari Advisors from the US, Mr. Hang Trung, Head of International Student Recruitment, or former Head of International Student Recruitment at the University of Newcastle in Australia, Mrs. Winnie Ellie, Partner at Education Insight, Dr. Srikumar Chakravarti, Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic, Head of Innovations and New Revenues at SEG University in Malaysia. Before we go into the discussion, I would very much like to just say a few words about our speakers. Dr. Rajika Bandari is an international higher education expert, a scholar practitioner, and founder of Rajika Bandari Advisors. Previously, she led the IC3 Institute as its president and CEO, and has over a decade at the Institute of International Education in the US, which is the capacity that I met Rajika possibly some 17 years ago, and have been in touch ever since. I would also like to mention Rajika's award-winning memoir, America Calling, a foreign student in a country of possibility. I have thoroughly enjoyed the book, Rajika, and I would also like to recommend it to those interested in the students' perspectives. Mr. Hang Trung is formerly Head of International Student Recruitment at the University of Newcastle in Australia, who is currently based in the UK. He has more than 20 years of management experience in international education. Previous roles include Executive Director at AFS, Cultural Exchange in Hong Kong, and Senior Manager of International Affairs at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, among other roles. I'm delighted to welcome Winnie Ellie, who is a partner with me at Education Insight. I've known Winnie for more than 2 decades now, and she has a rounded interest in education, strategy, governance, leadership, and management. And over the past 2 decades, she has served in various senior academic leadership and executive positions, such as Vice President at the University of Southampton in the UK, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Newcastle in Australia, Director of International Affairs at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Deputy Country Director of the British Council in Nigeria, and also in education roles with the British Council in Hong Kong. And her most recent post was with City University of Hong Kong. And it's a pleasure to also introduce to you Dr. Srikumar Chakrabarty, who is Head of Innovation and New Revenue SEGI at SEGI University in Malaysia. He's the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the institution and has held various leadership roles at SEGI and in other universities. Sri has held numerous, also has won various awards in the education industry, some of which include the Academic Brilliance Award in 2013 for excellence in research, the Venus International Medical Award in 2018, Outstanding Scientist Award in 2019, and the list goes on. We are truly delighted to have you with us today, Sri. We should possibly start in the running order of the introduction. And Radhika, I would like to invite you to present a US perspective for us on international student recruitment. Radhika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Janet, and great to be with everybody. And thank you for including me in this wonderful panel. And what I thought I would do is sort of start with the broad US view and some of the things that we're seeing at this end, but then maybe also take a few minutes to talk about India. Janet, if you think that would be of interest, because India is, of course, a critical country whenever we talk about global student mobility, and also that is one of the other countries where my work focuses a lot. And then I'll wrap up my remarks by sort of taking it in a broader view again of some of the takeaways that we're seeing at the US end. So the first thing I'd like to share is that as many of you may have seen in the news with new data that was released just about a couple of weeks ago, is that at the US end, it seems like it's been a very positive news story with international student enrollments having bounced back. Numbers the numbers grew significantly, and in general I would say that there's a positive sense amongst US institutions that things are mostly back on track. However, and there is always a however or a but, I think we need to, I look at these numbers with cautious optimism, because one of the aspects of the US higher education sector has always been that there's a great deal of variability. And some of the nuances get lost when we just focus on that top line number. So yes, there's been a lot of growth for certain types of institutions, but it's been quite unevenly distributed, where actually some smaller institutions and community colleges have not fared so well. One of the other nuances is that it's still not clear whether the sharp increase that we saw for the 2022 academic year is really a sharp increase, or whether some of it is still a recovery from the pandemic, where many students had deferred their admission, and so we're still playing catch up. The other element was that actually numbers declined at the undergraduate level, and where most of the growth has really come from is at the graduate level, and a boom amongst Indian graduate students, which I will speak about in just a minute. So there have been these variations. The numbers of students from China have continued to decline. So this still poses a real issue for institutions who have really, over the past few years, not diversified their recruitment from different countries and are still over-reliant on Chinese undergraduate students. So there are these different pieces. to sort of this overall picture that I think it's really important to look at as we consider what's next. And I personally don't think that, it's that the US has completely pulled out of some of these issues, also because some of the more concerning policy issues still remain, and I will address those as well in a few minutes. Turning to sort of what's driven a lot of the growth, the story in the US has been all about India. And my sense is that as we again think about where are tomorrow's students going to come from, not just for the US, but really globally for any country attempting to attract students, is that the demand will continue to grow significantly from India, as it will actually also from Africa, because this is really a story of demographics, where again, if we look at future population growth, all the growth is projected to come from India's youth population or the significantly growing population in Africa. One of the other pieces about India that's really made a difference to these vastly growing numbers is that in just the past few years, we've actually seen a real diversification in the types of Indian students who are now able to study abroad, which wasn't necessarily happening before. And what this means for institutions and others attempting to attract international students is that in the past, there's been a real tendency, when thinking about India, there's been a tendency to just go to the top cities or the top metros of, New Delhi and Mumbai, Bangalore, etc. But in fact, there's a lot of demand and a lot of talent in sort of what may be considered second and third tier cities. So institutions that are really expanding their recruitment processes are beginning to realize that there's a really untapped market there and that they really need to go beyond those top cities. So I think that's driving a lot of the growth once we really start looking at students across all of India, not just those big metros. Coming back to, because I want to be mindful of time, sort of the third piece about sort of what attracts all international students to the US. And again, as in the US, we look to recruiting more international students, more students from India, more students from places that have a lot of potential growth. I would like to argue that it's not so much about what are sort of news-breaking, innovative recruitment practices, as it is about continuing to build current practices, but also really demonstrating a commitment to student success, and that then comes full circle and attracts more students in the future. And currently here in the US, that is a big focus of institutions. That's sort of one of my key messages when I'm working with institutions, that we need to focus, we need to move away from sort of what I call just the obsessive focus on the entry point, which is of course recruitment, enrollments, admission, but really, really focusing on that full pathway of the international student experience and really serving the whole international student. And so that includes a focus on career and career services. This has been a big issue in the US, where a lot of questions have been raised on how well are institutions really serving the career needs of international students and advising them appropriately. It's about alumni relations. To date, there's been a significant neglect of how do you really foster and cultivate your international student as alumni, as you would do with your domestic students. So that's another area of focus. And then the third piece is really, really supporting students and helping them connect the dots between higher education, their academic requirements, and the immigration requirements that sort of really rule their time as a student. And so I want to conclude with that, because the immigration piece and the immigration policy piece is currently really huge in the US. And I know that it is for every major country. Janet, where you sit, this has been really significant. And in all of our countries, we've seen this, that anytime there's a shift in policies, you begin to see the numbers of students. I mean, you could almost draw a causal relationship between those two aspects. And so here too, in the US, we have not quite yet figured that out. Despite it being a friendlier environment over the past few years, the policies have remained unchanged. And the reality is that when students are looking to, and when institutions are trying to attract students, students are very much focused on sort of all of those pieces. How will you support me with my career pathway, and what are going to be the opportunities after my studies? So the post-study work policies and immigration policies remain really critical. And what I leave you with is, even though there was this huge euphoria around the recent Open Doors numbers, again, that were released for the US a couple of weeks ago, that numbers are up, we've seen huge growth. A data point that many people missed was that there was actually a steep decline in the numbers of students who were participating in post-study work opportunities. In fact, it was the largest decline in 3 years, which sort of really poses this issue of what's being offered to students. Will students continue to be attracted to the US if these sorts of policies continue to be restrictive? So, Janet, I will stop there and turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Radhika. I mean, you touched on quite a few issues that I would really love to explore further, but I'll probably save those as part of our Q&A right at the end. But the really burning one, and I apologize to everyone because I can't resist that one, is you mentioned immigration, and immigration is such a huge hot potato everywhere. And in the UK, the headlines here have been dominated by the huge number of issued visas and student dependents. And I guess a lot of the problem stems from the fact that students are treated as immigrants in the UK. They've got immigrant status. And this is in stark contrast with the US, where the student visas are non-immigrant visas. Which kind of leads me to the point whether, if we treat students as non-immigrants, given that they're temporarily residing in a country for the purpose of study, it seems that many of the kind of theoretical, politically inflamed inflammatory issues may be not as pertinent. Do you think that, in a way, the debates around international students in the US has been protected by the fact that their status is a non-immigrant status, and as such, they don't feature in any net migration figures like the UK? Has the student visas always been non-immigrant visas?
Yeah, the student visa, the F1 student visa, has always been non-immigrant. What's really problematic is it's what's called a single intent visa, which means that a student stands before a consular officer and, sort of has to predict what they're going to be doing in some cases 6 or 7 years down the line. And the fact is that visa mechanism really does not match what the reality is, where over 70% of international students coming to the US will stay on permanently. That's what the data shows. It also doesn't match the reality that we've got a growing population of refugee students for whom the only mechanism is the F1 student visa. And it doesn't fit the situation, because the F1 student visa requires a student to promise that they're going back home, and for displaced students, they've lost their home, which is why they're leaving in the first place. But to your sort of pointed question around has it helped steer clear of these debates, yes, it is not, international students are not as caught up in the overall immigration debate as they are in the UK. But I do think that they're affected nonetheless, because every time the country has sort of come under pressure where there's, the whole narrative at the national level is sort of escalated to the idea of sort of the other. And I'm using this broad category of like, who is the other? Who are the people from other countries? Who are the people that constitute the non-American? Absolutely, the lens has also been turned on international students. And, despite all the data that we have, those arguments have not gone away, which begin with the student when they enter. Oh, are international students taking away college seats from domestic students? Then when they finish, then the conversation is about, oh, are they taking jobs away from Americans? And then eventually it escalates to that broader narrative of immigrants taking something away from the native born. So I think they're still very much caught up in that, though not as acutely as in the UK.
That's fantastic, Radhika. Thank you very much. And we shall now move west towards Hung and continue to explore the very same issue, but in Australia. Hung, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Janet. So, what I'm not going to talk about policies or scholarship that different institutions use to attract students, but maybe more of what's been working on the ground. And when I talk about student recruitment, it's more for institutions that rely on student revenue to survive, rather than institutions that do this because it's nice to do. It's a nice thing to do. Student recruitment has changed quite a bit. I think students now have a lot of information versus maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I'll give you an example. I think this was pre-COVID when I was at Newcastle, and I was in Delhi, and I was visiting one of our agents, and then the agent said, well, here's a student that has an offer from you, and he has an offer from somebody else, and he's trying to think where he should go. Why can you meet with him? I said, fine. So when I met this student and he did all of his research, he knew what program he wanted to go into. He knew all the academics, their research, their field of expertise, etc. He knew what a campus looked like, and there was nothing that I could tell him that he didn't know. And the way that he was posing his questions to me were a bit aggressive because he's trying to challenge me, right? What can I tell him that he doesn't know? So at the end, I came up with, well, do you know that on campus today's lunch special is vegetarian pizza? I mean, that was the only thing that I could have told him that he didn't know. So I think that example sort of gives us an understanding of how the market changes. In Australia and some other parts of the world where institutions really drive international student numbers, what they've done is now there's an in-country presence. We see that everywhere. People have local staff in country because we're talking about most of these students are coming over for full degree or for award programs. So most are from Asia. So we see institutions have staff in India, in China, in Southeast Asia, etc. So that talks about the presence of the institution. And I think there's another expectation now where having people there is no longer enough. I think one of the speakers will touch on this later on is T&E programs, transnational programs. If you look at, there's an example, if you look at RMIT, right, based in Melbourne, they have a campus in Vietnam for years. And the campus doesn't really take away the onshore students. Actually, RMIT attracts the highest number of Vietnamese students in Australia. So that's how we see that transnational education translates into onshore recruitment. And then we also see institutions that have articulation programs, 2+2, 3+1, 1+3, whatnot. So I think the parents and students are looking to see institutions' engagement, presence in markets beyond your typical promotion and working with agents and etc. And we also see alumni now is playing a bigger part of in-country. But also on the flip side, onshore, on campus, the student experience and learning outcome has also been enhanced. Because if a student, international student, doesn't like the lunch or breakfast that he or she is having on campus, you're sure he or she's going to tell his or her friends back home, and then everyone will know. So the student experience is crucial or critical in terms of what drives international student recruitment, and also ranking. Ranking plays an important part in Asia. And also, when I was at Newcastle, we also had to change the way we work at universities. I mean, because Australia is heavily regulated, and to get part of our team to work on Saturdays to accommodate the students' needs, it was very difficult. But we had to get it done because that's what the market wants and that's what the market needs. And if we don't do it, we're gonna be falling behind. And then also, in terms of channels, what we see in Australia is 70% of our students coming via agents. Agent network has also changed. So now you have, everyone has a platform for recruitment, and many agents now have what they call a B2B model. So B2B model used to be an master agent working with sub-agents, but now it's so competitive where you've got master agents working with insurance salespeople, working with real estate agents to drive numbers for them. So then what does B2B mean anymore, and if there's any takeaway from what I'm speaking at this session, is for all of you who are parents who have kids that are wanting to study abroad, my recommendation to you is join one of these platforms, become one of the sub-agents, then you get a commission, which is a scholarship for your own kids anyway. So, but I'll leave it at that, Janet. Thanks.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you. So there is a tip how to save on the commission to the student who's going to get on going to, to study abroad. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hung. It's really, I was quite particularly pleased to hear about the widening pathways for students to study abroad. And so basically we may be moving towards a model where the students go to study abroad for shorter periods of time because part of their studies is at another university, maybe in the home country, and then they only go abroad for duration, for a limited duration of the degree, and as a result, they may graduate with 1 or 2 or 3 degrees from 3 different institutions, just as a matter of speech. That's fascinating to hear. Thank you. And Winnie, over to you. You can choose which country you want to elaborate your thoughts on, whether it's UK, Australia, Hong Kong.
Thanks, Janet, and fascinating listening to Rajika, and I learned so much from Hung. I'm going to sign up as an agent one day. Right. I love this topic. The more I think about the way that you phrase that, Janet, I just thought the search for the best models for international recruitment is such an ideal state and a journey that I suppose no single country, institution, person can claim that they have found a silver bullet. And as someone who has been on this journey for over 2 decades, I suddenly felt very old when I was preparing this. The best I could offer in tonight's conversation as we go on to unpack more, perhaps is a reflection of the time on the workable models that I have seen and worked to when I was with the British Council in Hong Kong and the British Council in Nigeria. And the years I have worked in further education sector in universities in the UK, Hong Kong, and Australia. I could not emphasize enough the leadership needed to welcome international students. Rajika mentioned earlier about national policies. Janet, you mentioned about the UK, the national self-harm that the sector's been sort of rallying towards lately. And we have seen our fair share in Australia, Hung, when we worked there. So by leadership, I refer to the national policies, international students' visas, international students' services, protection of international students' rights. We don't talk enough about it. And also graduate employment opportunities and so forth. Obviously overlaid with the pandemics in previous 2 years and 3, we're still living with it. And also the geopolitics this is going to be a really serious topic. But I would imagine you would agree with me that we haven't quite seen partnership in our world working towards partnerships. We haven't quite seen the sort of national level partnerships, the national level sort of leadership, and also partnership across departments, national departments. So I could go on, but I'll swiftly move on to the next aspect that I think is important. A respect towards student voice is another indicator of what good looks like in international student recruitment. Student voice is something that I passionately believe in, but obviously, notwithstanding some of these sort of various sort of freedom of speech bills and sort of legislation in various institutions, but I'm going back to the basic in the terms of listening to students as you would like to be listened to as a human being as a start. Sometimes students are making a simple request from their cultural perspective, and I have seen and worked with colleagues who just sweep it under the carpet. I have worked in the sector long enough. I could say that, but I think it's important that we give students the voice. I'm unpacking things recently, and I'll come across, colleagues and students talking about how important student voice is to them. So I think this particular respect is something that I want to put back on the table to say that what's good look like in terms of, really listening to students. But I take Hang's point that students now have so much information that actually, I still remember when we had orientation, my niece studied in the UK. She studied from international school in Bangkok, study in the UK, and then in her little chat group, they know straight away which university on the East Coast of the United States offered the best lunch. So they were showing photos of their canteens and comparing notes. So that is sort of on the light side of it. But we have seen that firsthand when Hung and I worked in PolyU, where students were comparing lecturers teaching the same course on marketing in 250 theatres at the same time. One room was absolutely satisfied. The other room actually wanted the lecturers removed. But I was so connected with students. We sort of, worked that through very quickly. But that tells you how informed and how connected students is. Moving on to the third point that I want to say about what good look like for international student recruitment. I think welcoming international students take not one community, but communities. The discipline subject communities, I use plural here because it's not just the one. The university community, the student community, the alumni community, the professional staff community, governing board community. And I here means welcoming not by words. We can say a lot, but during orientation, looking at the lost soul on the campus, if we do not meet them with a smile and directions, there will be lots of lost soul and lots of hearts and minds lost. And that is a very minor example, but really welcoming by the sort of action that we can do. Now, I want to come to the engine of what good looks like in international student recruitment. I'm a big fan of Janet's work, and I'm going to do sorry, Mandy, I'm going to just blow education insight on a bit. It's really about an evidence-based approach with faculty engagement and ownership. We can't just plug a number in the air or use data as we want to. It's really about informed by an evidence-based approach. That's the basic of it. But we need faculty engagement. We need faculty to own what they want to do, talk to them enough, engage with them, and then led by a highly trained professional team. International student recruitment is not international office. That's not only their job. That's the job of a lot of very, very highly trained colleagues across the whole university. But the team that works towards it, I always said, it doesn't need to be big. It has to be really good. And then I think having that particular approach, you need to have a plan. You have to have an operational plan that is suitable for your institution. It could be highly centralized, depending on your structure, but it could be highly devolved. And I'm a big fan of devolved, but supported by a very, very well-trained centralized team. Very small. I have worked to that, and I'm a strong believer of that. But this is a very critical point that I've learned. You need to have very clear single point accountability. This is absolutely critical, because at university, everyone feel like they have a role, but no one really say, this is me. The buck sits with me, and this is me that actually going to trigger what happens. And I think the plan needs to pinpoint accountability. I shall leave my reflection here. I'm happy to unpack and discuss further with Janet, fellow speakers and delegates who are in this room with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Winnie. It's I have to admit, I'm really pleased to hear about the importance of amplifying student voice and evidence-based student recruitment, where we share the student success. And this success stories of the current students that drive the future recruitment. It's such an important point to make. And Sri, you've been waiting patiently, and I can't wait to hear the insights and perspectives from one of best and most successful institutions in international collaborations, partnerships, and innovations, SEGI. Over to you, Sri.
Thank you so much, Janet, and thank you to all members in the Fireside Chat. The Fireside Chat is actually getting warm right now. We've had 3 speakers, and me being the 4th, I just realized that my role has become easier because a lot of what I wanted to say has actually been discussed. So my role is easy. But let me add a little more heat to the fire, and let me put in a little more firewood by telling you something exactly contradictory to what the whole world says. The whole world says that at a time of COVID, we've actually lost student numbers. International student recruitment has reduced. Parents don't want to send their kids to other countries because they're worried that the kids would get stuck there. Contrarily, between 20 and 2021, there has been a 6% increase in international student recruitment. Between 2021 and 2022, there has been a 12% increase in international student recruitment. This is not just in Malaysia or Asia, it's world over. And this is despite the fact that we've had Brexit. We've had students moving to other countries. Now, in the next few minutes, I'm actually going to tell you the secret of how this happens. And I'm also going to share with you the secret of how we in my university have got 22,000 students from 83 countries. So hold on, I'm just putting some firewood into the fire and making sure that the Fireside Chat gets hotter. And I'll take a sip of my coffee. I was just telling the others, we need some coffee and I need some too.
These are fascinating figures, Sri. Yes, I can't wait. Tell us more.
So ladies and gentlemen, the recruitment industry, there's no name for this. I would call it the student recruitment industry, is much more money spinning than Hollywood. $40 billion per year in the US is brought in by international students. In Malaysia, it is 60 billion ringgit, of which 40% of which is brought in by international students. And why? Internet connectivity has increased and global mobility has increased. Now, you may be wondering, man, this guy is kidding. How can student numbers increase when during COVID, I did not want to send my people out of the country? Now, what happened during COVID is when everybody did not want to go to other countries or send their kids to other countries, many universities started something different, hybrid curriculum, online curriculum. So some of our universities, including mine, we got over 2,000 students from China at a time when we had the peak of COVID, new recruits, because we were offering online programs. So Janet was asking me in the beginning of the talk, Like, what are the innovations that we're doing now? The main innovation is that online programs have come into play. And when you have an online program, students like to do online programs from other countries, because international student recruitment takes advantage of one weakness that we all have. And the weakness has been there since time immemorial. Ladies and gentlemen, man is always an immigrant. Man has never been satisfied staying in one place. That is why we have spread to so many places and so many civilizations have come. So students always like to look for courses in other countries. Even if your program is good, if your university is good, you're always attracted to other countries. So that is the main weakness that student recruitment agencies have actually capitalized on. So if you see, world over, student recruitment agencies don't actually talk about more than employability. They talk about immigration benefits. That is how they sell programs. And of course, maybe during the second round of talks, I'll actually talk about student agencies letting it out to sub-agencies, whereby sub-agencies don't know what the university is about. All they tell the students is, you just bring your certificates and you get admitted. And that's where many students are misled. That's a different story. We'll talk during the second round. So basically, the secret to international student recruitment this year, last year, and the year to come is basically, I would summarize it as incentive. The university needs money. We need money. We need international students' money. And at the same time, we need to score well in the QS ranking, the THE ranking, applied HE ranking. And for all this, we need international students. We need student mobility as well. Mobility is another topic, again, we'll talk later. So what do we as a higher education institution have to do to boost international enrollment at a time when competition is extremely severe? I tell you what we did. Maybe this is a secret which I'm sharing with you all. Some of my people are already here. Adopting a flexible approach. Marketing your brand online. We move everything online. Marketing is online. Effective communication. And this communication is in the form of emails, multi-levels of emails. And one of the important aspects of communication is to have your students and your alumni as your best university ambassadors. And investing in a good IT infrastructure, investing in a good student admission software. So expanding a little bit on these four before I give it back to you, flexibility is needed for international markets. You see, we need to be flexible when we identify countries to recruit students from. Economic fluctuations have affected countries. So we shouldn't be thinking, oh my God, this country ABC cannot send students to us. Instead, we need to see it another way, that we can get students from ABC by offering scholarships. Or countries DEF already offer scholarships to their students. What do? So if countries offer scholarships, we offer something more beneficial to the students, such as better quality education and so on. Pandemics. So these are all areas where we need to exercise flexibility and market our international student strategy differently to different countries. So for this, we need to make a list of, we need to do a homework, make a list of students who choose to study abroad and see what is the market for international student mobility and expand the network. Our strategy 2 out of 4, we involve stakeholders, international stakeholders. As a student, I will do a lot of digging to find out what others are saying. And that's where our student ambassadors come in useful. We get our existing students and our alumni to advocate our brand, and we get them to tell their stories. These stories can be as videos. And once the content has been produced, we leverage it on social media platforms. We can do it via paid ads on social media, target specific countries, and we can also target users based on their interaction to our website. Or we get a hub on our university website to feature their content. The third strategy is personalizing communication. Every student who comes to us gets a personalized connection, a personalized communication. So basically, we are nurturing our connection with the students. So as much as we have WhatsApp, we have SMSs and all, many websites and many articles say that the gold standard to get ROI when it comes to students is email. So when students, international prospects try to connect with us, we need to email them, for which we need to have a wonderful marketing team. So for example, our university and previous universities I worked with, we have a workflow when an individual registers for any international event or a talk show or an open day. We send out emails. Email 1 would be, thank you for registering with us. Email 2, after a few days, have you downloaded our prospectus? Email 3, we have an event, we have an open day, a reminder. Email 4 will be a follow-up. Email 5, ready to start your application? So something like that. Huh? We actually have a workflow of email. This is possible only if we have a good application process with a good software. And the last strategy, which I believe we should follow and we are following, is optimizing our website, which everybody would agree all over the world. We pay attention to our landing page and all our contact forms. And so whereby we convert all our visitors in our website into qualified leads. Ladies and gentlemen, before I give it back to the moderator, remember the average website user's attention is just 8 seconds. So our landing page should have key information about our program, which attracts them within 8 seconds. So this is done not only in Malaysia, but in many places world over. International student recruitment is an art of its own. And the last 3 years, we've been focusing more on web-based recruitment, as much as we have over 60, 70,000 official agents and another 200,000 unofficial agents. And before I finish up, one of the main strategies we usually use in international student recruitment is infographics, videos. These are enough to explain tuition fees, accommodation, program structure. Nobody reads material on a web page. So I stop with this for this moment until I get some more logs of wood for the fireplace. And back to you, Janet, until I come back to the next round.
That's fantastic, Sri. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. I was quite heartened by your notion. It's not just students who are immigrants, it's mankind that's the immigrant there. There is always this drive for the best and for betterment. And the only way we can do that is by moving on, by changing places. And I would love to open the floor now to questions from the audience. Do you use the Q&A function or the chat function? Should you fancy, you can join the panel as well to ask your question. But while the audience is thinking of their questions, I would really like to follow up with initially with Radhika and also with everybody else. Radhika, you mentioned at the start of your talk about the areas of international recruitment that have experienced significant growth in the USA, and that is mainly postgraduate recruitment. So we are seeing decline in undergraduate recruitment. And I can't resist, but this really resonates well with what we are seeing in the UK. But for the UK, it's a different reason. The major undergraduate markets here are EU and China. And following Brexit, EU is declining and geopolitical tensions are impacting China. And as a result, we are seeing significant declines in undergraduate. I'm preempting that we'll see significant declines in undergraduate recruitment, whereas the growth markets at the moment, on the back of the post-study work visas that were reintroduced last year, in effect, we're seeing significant growth in significant masters markets like India, Nigeria, Pakistan, and some others. But bearing in mind that as the world's global higher education systems mature, we're likely to see improved domestic capacity for higher education. Is then postgraduate demand the one that is likely to drive future global mobility? And I would just like to invite a few reflections here, and please do disagree with me as well. Who would like to start first? Radhika, would you like to come on that one?
I mean, I don't know that it will be, I don't know that I agree that it will just be the postgraduate demand that will drive future growth, because we are going to, as I mentioned during my remarks, that there's a large demographic story to this discussion. So we are going to see that continued growth from not just India, actually all of South Asia, where the population is slated to keep growing. We're going to see, you know, a large growth from Africa, according to all projections. And while I agree with you that some of these countries, such as India, of course, China is another example, have significantly bolstered their own higher education capacity at home, the number of high quality seats are just not enough to keep up with the growing demand and the sort of demand we're going to see in the near future. So I think that the need for students to go overseas, even at the undergraduate level, will probably continue. As for what we're seeing right now, at least from the US end, and sort of this either flat numbers or declining numbers at the undergraduate level, I think it's a confluence of certainly geopolitics, because a lot of the undergraduate growth was driven by China in recent years. It's also unaffordability, which we haven't really talked about much on this panel, but you know, a US education, and I would say an education in any global north country, still remains shockingly out of reach for many students from particularly global south countries. And so I think that's a real factor at the undergraduate level, because at least in the US, if any support exists for international students, it's primarily at the postgraduate level. So I think the unaffordability piece is a really, really critical one.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Anybody else that would like to tackle that question? Sri?
If I can just add to this, again, it comes back to our normal immigration inherent genetic skills that we have in our DNA. I'm talking like a medical doctor now, as much as I shouldn't be. I should be talking like an academician. You've never had any instance where a student goes abroad for his undergraduate course and comes back to his hometown for his postgraduate course. In most cases, it has been the other way around. I'll tell you why. As a child is born, as a child grows up, he does his schooling in his native village or in his native town. Okay, and then as he grows up, he realizes that his knowledge expands around, and he knows that there are other institutions in his city, in the other city, which he likes to try. And only when he goes out does he realize that it is not just a city, but we are out by a much wider horizon, many countries. It's something like when you're at home, you feel that only your mother knows how to cook. But when you come out of your home, when you come to a college or a university, you know that, okay, there's food outside, there's food in the hostel. And when you go to another country, you realize that, my God, we have multiple cuisines and I can have different experiences in eating. What I give as an example of eating is actually academia. When you're exposed to different countries, you're exposed to differences in academia, and you're exposed to a diversity in culture when it comes to learning. So this happens only as you grow up. Never, as I said, I repeat, never do you see a case where a student does his graduation outside and comes back to his country to do his post-graduation. Because when a student is doing his graduation, he starts sending feelers to other countries. And this is where student recruitment comes in. Student recruitment processes, either as agents or as professors or as research supervisors, they sell the institution to the student and they convince them to purchase the product. And what is the product in this case? Education. Now, we need to remember that for students, education is much more than just a simple commodity. A college degree is an identity. And later on, when they go on to university degree is an identity. It is an investment. It is the future. So a student will not tell you that I studied in Kuala Lumpur. I did my bachelor's in the UK and I came back to do my master's in Kuala Lumpur. Rather, he would be proud to say that I did my bachelor's in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. I went and did my master's in the UK, because he sees it as an identity, as an investment, and as his future. And he focuses on things like quality, value, and integrity when compared to, as I told in my previous talk, when compared to agents who actually sell immigration as a benefit. So the key to a modern student recruitment is professional engagement. And I think this is the answer to your question. The reason why students go abroad for postgraduate education is because they feel the sense of professional engagement based on academic abilities, career goals, and maybe even financial potentials. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Sri. And I would like to bring Anas Abduladi, who's got his hand raised. Anas, would you like to come in, please? I think I've tried to upgrade to upgrade Anas as a panelist, but I'm not sure whether I've been successful. I wonder whether the Applied HE colleagues can help with the actual upgrade. I think I might have totally failed on that one there.
Yeah, Janet, I don't see him on the list now.
We might have he might have dropped from the audience. I did try to upgrade him.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's okay. Winnie, if I can come to you now, because I feel that this discussion is taking us to a very exciting place, but we are also running out of time. What do you think as the future models of growth, which is the area that is most likely to undergo significant expansion over the next few years?
I think I'll pick up. I just first of all want to say I agree with Sarika in terms of certain students, and we in marketing in our world we call it segmentation. So there's still a group of students who want to do what you just described. Rajika mentioned about students are we didn't talk about affordability and costs, and that's where the regional mobility comes in. And as I sort of mentioned earlier on, geopolitics and making students feel welcome. So there is a latest study that came out by one of the very big sort of education agency in China called New Oriental. I think everyone in the room would have heard of them. They in 8 consecutive years, they run an annual sort of study abroad survey of their students. The latest one just came out. I'm yet to read it, but I read a table that sort of captured my attention. I'll come to point, Janet. It's really about regional mobility and perception and where their preferred destination. The reason that graph in an academic journal in Hong Kong caught my attention was the perception of students in the coming years is they will want to study in Hong Kong and Singapore, but then perception in to go to the UK on all the traditional English-speaking country is going down. So I would imagine, like Rajika said, the pool is big, the demand is huge. Segmentation-wise, there's still a group of students who would do what Sarika just mentioned. They would just want to do that because is a generation thing, but also a personal worth and perception. But because of the bulk of students is so huge, there's another group of students that will look for mobility within the region and the transnational education opportunities within the region. So closer home where I'm based at the moment in Hong Kong, in the Greater Bay Area region, there are 9 municipalities they call, plus 2 special administration, Hong Kong and Macau. And together that combined population is 86 million. And in terms of GDP, we're talking about $1,668 billion US. So it's one of the wealthiest urban cluster in the world, with at least 5 top 100 universities in the world, whichever ranking you look at. So in a way, I think that come to a point in terms of regional mobility and also Tianyi, lots of things are happening. And I know I'm running out of time, Janet, so I'll stop right here.
Now that's fascinating because it's the rise of this education spots or hotspots globally is really interesting to observe And the Greater Bay Area on its own probably has the economic output of South Korea. And in terms of population, it's quite a sizable, actually, demand, the way you put it, in terms of millions of people, and such a high concentration of disposable income as well. But if we also have a question around the expansion of online education, and I just and whether online education is eating into the market share of student mobility. And Hung, I would really like to give you the chance to have your thoughts on that issue before we conclude, and I hand back to Mandy. Do you think that online learning will eat into the market share of physical student mobility?
Yeah, but online learning has always been there, so it's nothing new, but it's just when the pandemic hit, then more people go online. But here's an interesting question. When you look at the pandemic hit in China, institutions that had more students were the one that were offering study centers where students go to the center and get classes online or on the TV or monitor, whatever it is. But then, so it seems the Chinese students still prefer to go to a place, a venue, to get the education versus getting the online education at home. So because they couldn't travel, so that's what they did. So I don't think online will ever eat into the mobility bit, because that's the demand from expectation from parents and students.
That's great. Thank you very much, Hung. Are there any very final comments or reflections from my panel? Anything that you really wanted to say but you didn't get the chance to? And we can't possibly close the session without giving you the opportunity to share your very final insight or a very final word of wisdom. And at this point, I thank you very much to you all. Thank you to our audience and to the Applied HE team. Mandy, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, can you see my screen? A big thank you, everyone, for your participation, for joining us for this very interesting and relevant discussion. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Please allow me to also express my deep appreciation to our wonderful speakers and Janet for their time and contributions. This is the last episode of the Fireside Chats for the year. And now that travel restrictions are lifted, we're planning more physical events in addition to the Fireside Chat webinars for next year. So do look out for our emailers. So while I'm going through my closing presentation, my colleague Simon will be quietly upgrading all of you to panelists so that you'll be able to meet and greet each other at the end of this event. This is our signature Applied HE webinar sign-off, so please do not decline when he is upgrading you. We'd love to see as many of you as possible, but please mute your mics till I finish my presentation. So these are the proposed topics for next year's Fireside Chats. If you'd like to hear some other topics, you can always write to us and suggest. We'll do our best to accommodate. Alternating every other month with Fireside Chats is the entertaining Squaring the Circle debate. Again, if you have topics in mind and you'd like us to debate on it, you are most welcome to write to us. We welcome your input. In February this year, we launched the Applied HE Private University Ranking ASEAN, and we're now in the process of preparing the Applied HE Private University Ranking Asia Pacific to be launched in 2023. The Applied HE Private University Ranking is tilted towards teaching and learning and employability, which are the main strengths of private universities. Now, we all know that private universities are often highly innovative, high-quality institutions that serve a large group of students, but they're often undervalued in other research-heavy university rankings. So we are evaluating private universities based on the key strengths, and we hope to shine a light on this often overlooked sector. To all the private universities out there, please join us for this private university ranking that is created specially for you. This is still, graduate employability, or GE, is a key concern. among higher education stakeholders, including parents, students, and the government. This is still work in progress. We put a lot of focus on graduate employability, which is why we aspire to present the Graduate Employability Index in each individual country. Right now, we've completed the GE for Malaysia and the Philippines. So a physical launch is being planned in both Malaysia and the Philippines sometime in the first quarter of 2023. I'm looking forward to meet all of you physically, and I hope you will all attend and learn more about the graduate employability status in both Malaysia and the Philippines. In the pipeline, we're also talking to South Africa, Thailand, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan. So if you're interested to be our partners for this project, we'd love to talk to you. The benefits of this project for you as an institution is to increase your local and international branding. Your local media will be very interested in the local employment scene, and we at Applied HE will be promoting you on the global front. It's also a good strategy to understand what your employers want. And of course, this is a great way to boost your employer reputation amongst many other attributes. So for more branding strategies, we are developing an Applied HE super app. We have Future. It's the first of its kind, an online networking platform created specially for the higher education sector. The Alumni Ready, which is a CRM. So now you can keep track, manage, and email your alumni from near and far of news and happenings of your institution anytime, anywhere, all backed up with data and all on one platform. A news website called Extra Extra, now indexed by Google News. And with this, you can disseminate news and information about your university to your global peers and stakeholders. So far, these 3 sub-apps are ready and have been launched, and it is a complimentary service for you. So it is in your interest to take advantage of them. The next sub-app, still in development stage, is the mobility and exchange app. When this app is ready, it will be the perfect tool for your faculty, staff, and student mobility and exchange, be it on a national, regional, or international level. More sub-apps are in the pipeline, and they are all related to higher education, like universities, courses, student recruitment, summer schools, jobs, internships, scholarships, research, professional training, micro-credentials, lifelong learning, and a whole lot more. Our aim is to provide a one-stop platform for all your education and beyond needs. So we also have 3 evaluation tools, which also double up to meet your benchmarking and global branding needs. We have the all-round job ready rating to evaluate the quality of teaching and learning and employability of your graduates. It's organized around 22 employment clusters. So what this means is it can put a spotlight on every program that you have. We also have an English ready rating to evaluate the quality of English language instruction in non-English speaking countries. It's also a great marketing tool for the recruitment of international students. And the online ready rating, which helps your institution to benchmark and promote its online programs and courses. These rating tools can translate into affordable strategies for global branding and marketing of your institution. And last but not least, as you know, we are the well-prepared new kid on the block. We still are, and we're very grateful for all the support that we can get. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our very supportive sponsors, to the sponsors of the Squaring the Circle debate and fireside chat, City University of Hong Kong, Universitas Airlangga of Indonesia, and Education Insight of UK. And to the sponsors of the Private University Ranking ASEAN, my deep appreciation to APU, Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation Malaysia, City University of Hong Kong, and Sunway University Malaysia. A big thank you for all your valuable support given to Applied HE. Right, thanks very much, everyone. This is the end of my presentation, but please do not leave the room yet. This is the last Applied HE signature sign-off for the year, and we want to invite you to experience a networking atmosphere that is as creative and as close as we can get to a physical networking environment. So we're going to open the room now. for a few minutes. You can see each other, say hello, introduce yourself. You can also leave your name, contact in the chat box, or even a message of your intention. This is as much as we can do online in the name of networking. So please turn on your cameras, get a drink in hand, and relax. Over to you now, Simon, to get our online social event started. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day or a great day ahead.
You stop share, Mandy. Yeah. The room is open now. There's only two
Who came up?
accepted, only
God.
two accepted our invitation. Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, then we'll make this a quick one.
Hi, Prof. Shamim.
You're muted.
Hi everyone. Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Shamin.
Hi.
Simon.
And Catherine, where are you from?
Hello, Shaman.
Hi, Simon. Hi.
Hi, good evening. Hi. I'm Catherine. I'm from the Philippines, from the University of Santo Tomas. I'm part of the College of Hospitality and Tourism Management.
Great.
For those who don't know me, I'm Shamin. I'm from Segi University with my boss here.
We're all friends.
You.
And Munia Maharazu. And Astrid.
Hi, I'm Astrid. I'm from Universitas Surabaya in Indonesia, East Java.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining. It shows that there are many like-minded people who are actually interested in student recruitment. And student recruitment, I think, is across boundaries and borders, not just universities, but also among agencies and also among parents as well. On many occasions, we feel that we need to know more about student recruitment because we are parents and we need our kids also to do well. So irrespective of whether we are all parents or agents or university people or colleges or schools, this is a topic which is good for all of us. And we can do best to make sure that 2023, 24 are great years for international students. Now, everything is about international students.
I wanted to say, you mentioned about when students go out, they continue on, they don't come back this way, do their postgraduate studies. But I beg to differ because many do their undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
And then they come back and they do their postgraduate degree.
True. Many do that. Well, I was actually, when I said that, I was having India in mind because this is the national policy in India. In India, one person in every family has to go abroad and sort of settle down and, so I had India in mind when I said that. Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see how some parents think, talking to some parents here in Malaysia. Many feel that, okay, my child should do his first degree in Malaysia, but when it comes to a postgraduate degree, I don't mind sponsoring him in the world that he would like to go.
And
so
that's another thing.
Dynamics,
Hi, Munir. Well, that's another thing. In Asia, parents decide what the son wants to do, what the child wants to do. I want my child to do this, that. So,
yeah, parents are a big stakeholder, in not only in terms of university education, but even student exchange, mobility. Well, Asian parents, okay? Asian parents.
Basically, the child has no say. Parents. So schools should take note, maybe recruit the parents instead of the students.
Yeah, I've always said that if you market to parents as well, particularly when you talk about Asia.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you so much for the few who stayed behind. Really appreciate it. So this is our last event. Look out for next year for the new series. So Merry Christmas.
To see you all. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And so
Thank you all. Goodbye.
It's so nice.
Hi,
to
everyone.
see you again.
The team photo.
Yeah, I'm taking photos.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night. God bless.
Bye.